This podcast may contain television show spoilers and some adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, this is the first episode of our podcast, The Faves of Our Lives, a podcast about everyone's favorite everything. I'm Kelly, and your other host is Brittany.
Hey guys.
We came up with the idea of doing this podcast because we wanted to do something fun, creative, and different. We're both moms who listen to podcasts in our free time, and by free time, I mean when we're driving to and from work. We talked about it for a few days and thought, why not? We thought it would be fun to use social media to get you guys involved by doing polls, getting your feedback, and then giving you our feedback. We hope you enjoy it. We've already had a blast putting it together. And today we have a very special guest, our friend and an I Love Lucy mega fan, Abby.
Hey guys.
Alright, so we chose I Love Lucy because it was one of the highest polled shows that people requested that we do. I Love Lucy premiered October 15th, 1951, starring Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz, Vivian Vance, and William Frawley. The show starts out with Ricky and Lucy living in New York, where Ricky's trying to make it in show business. Fred and Ethel Mertz are their landlords and their friends. The show essentially revolves around Ricky's career and Lucy's attempts to help/become a star herself, which inevitably causes trouble and annoys Ricky. In Season 4, they all make the move to Hollywood, where Ricky is furthering his showbiz career, and in Season 6, they make the move to the country in Connecticut because Lucy wants to get away from city life. The show ended May 6, 1957. Now, we asked people on social media what some of their favorite episodes were, and we got a lot of response. So we're going to be discussing the 3 most mentioned episodes and Abby's favorite episode because she is our very special guest. The first episode we watched was from Season 2, Episode 1, titled Job Switching, but it's more commonly requested as the Candy Factory episode. Basically, the episode is driven by this bet that the couples come up with because Ricky suggests that Lucy is spending too much of his hard-earned money. So, they decide that the women are going to go out and get jobs, and the men are going to take care of the homes. Hilarity ensues because they all suck at everything they attempt, so the bet is called off. So, Abby, what is your favorite scene in this episode?
So, my favorite scene in this episode was actually not when Lucy and Ethel were in the chocolate factory, which, I mean, it was a hysterical scene, but I actually preferred when the men were in the kitchen and the rice started exploding. It's so great. My favorite part was when the rice started exploding and Ricky looks at it and he goes, "Oh, it's like a volcano." And then he's like, "Fred," he goes, "Fred, help me." And Fred grabs a teaspoon, literally a teaspoon, and like a cup, and is trying to get rid of the rice with that, as opposed to the big, huge bowls that Ricky was grabbing. It was just the best part of the show, I think.
I would prefer the teaspoon as the broom and dustpan that Ricky decides to use. That was disgusting.
Right?
I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, I don't believe they were eating that rice afterwards.
I hope not.
I mean, I'm sure there was still plenty that was good since they made so much.
Well, that's true. There's probably still enough in the pot. I don't know why they thought they had to save it all. There's plenty. Yeah,
that was another thing that was so funny when Ricky asked Fred what he thought about rice, and he said, or he goes, "What's your thought about rice?" And Fred goes, "Well, I know it was thrown at me on the worst day of my life."
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
That was my favorite line in the show.
I just remember, as a kid, watching it with my grandma, like, you don't catch things like that as a kid, but, like, I seriously almost spat out my drink when Ricky said that he made 4 pounds of rice for 4 people. I was like, oh no, that's me making spaghetti.
Right. I thought the same thing.
Kelly, what was your favorite part?
Oh, man.
I also really liked that scene. I just wrote down, oh my god, the chicken and the rice.
Yeah, I love your note-taking. It's my favorite.
My favorite line was when they were talking about how much money they spend, and Fred says, "She spends money like I was printing it in the basement."
Well, I mean, you could be, but...
I liked when they were at the employment agency, and they sat down with the agent, and he goes, "What do you do?" And Lucy says, "Well, what kind of jobs do you have open?" And he goes, "Well, what do you do?" And she goes, "Well, what kind of jobs do you have open?" They go back and forth. And then finally he goes, "Well, let's have you start." And she goes, "Well, what do you do?" And he goes, "Well, what kind of jobs do you have open?"
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the classic Looney Tune back and forth.
Right.
Yeah, I can't... I think that the chicken and the rice scene was my favorite, but I did enjoy the candy factory part too. I mean, that is a scene that is just imprinted in everyone's brain. Anybody who has watched I Love Lucy, that scene is there. I wasn't even an avid fan. I just watched episodes on Nick at Night when I spent the night with my grandma, but I remember that scene. And
I had a poster of Lucy with her chocolate shoved in her mouth and her hat all crooked in my room.
Yeah. It was, and that's why it's one of it's our most requested episode. People remember that one. I also, when I was watching this, I was kind of doing research as I watched, so we have a few kind of fun facts about the episode. This scene was actually shot with a real-life candy dipper who had never acted before. The part where she's rolling the candy and the chocolate, and Lucy was actually afraid that the woman would be hesitant to hit her with the chocolate. They get into this chocolate fight back and forth, and the woman hauled off and hit her so hard that Lucille Ball thought that her nose was broken. So apparently she was better than they thought when they hired her.
Right.
And then the woman was asked by Lucille Ball how she thought her first day in show business went, and the woman's reply was, "I've never been so bored in my life."
But I think the best part about Lucille Ball is how much she can say without actually saying a word. Like, all of her facial expressions and body language, they're just incredible, which really makes her one of the best actresses I've seen, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Kelly, I like your note here that her hands and arms during this scene look like a marionette puppet.
She does. It's like she has no idea how to dip chocolate, but she's trying so hard to act like she knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
And her hands are just everywhere.
It was great. And also, I'm sorry.
She was a dipper from way back when.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Can we talk about the boss at the candy factory, though?
Oh my gosh, the worst.
Because, yes, like, my notes literally say, she seems like a real see you next Tuesday, if you know what I mean. I would not want to work for that woman.
Hell no.
No, and I almost died when she said, "Speed it up."
Yeah, Lucy starts shoving the chocolates down her blouse.
And then Ethel's face when one gets past her and goes into the conveyor belt, and she was like, "Oh no."
Yeah. So, I think that one of my favorite scenes was actually how they ended this episode, when the guys come home and they're like, "Oh, did you see the kitchen?" Because obviously it's a mess. It's just there's
rice and chicken everywhere.
Like a whole chicken on the floor and rice in all of these bowls and dustpans and everything. So they apologize and they're like, "We're really sorry. Can we call off the bet? We got you a peace offering," and it's like 5 pounds of chocolate. It's like, that is the best. They ate every piece of candy off of that conveyor belt, and now they're getting chocolate from their husbands.
Best irony.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I thought that was the perfect ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was with you, Kelly. I kind of, like, I was rooting for the women to do really well at their jobs, but obviously that wouldn't have been as funny, but...
No, it wouldn't
know,
have
Right.
been, but...
No.
Maybe next time.
Yeah.
Maybe next time. I doubt it. We are talking about Lucy, but... I mean, she is good at some things, which we will find in this next episode. So, the next episode that we were going to talk about is titled Lucy Does a Television Commercial. And it's from Season 1, Episode 30. And it's often known as, you'll have to bear with me, the Vita Meta Vegemin episode. And it starts out with Lucy overhearing Ricky on the phone talking about finding a girl for a commercial, and she immediately starts begging him to let her do it. He says no, as always, so she has to sneak her way onto the set by intercepting a phone call. She arrives, does the commercial flawlessly. I mean, she's really good. But the scene involves her drinking a substance that is 23% alcohol, which... it sounds like my kind of vitamin, but if you're if you're trying to do a TV commercial, it's probably not the best thing. So she gets drunk with each additional take she does, and by the end of the episode, she's so drunk that she ruins Ricky's show, and he has to carry her off of the stage. So, Kelly, I know that this one was your favorite. Why was this one your favorite?
It was hilarious. I mean, obviously she's not really drunk, but her acting is so on point. Like, she looks so drunk. And she has to keep tasting it over and over and over. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's really, really funny. And then I see you put in your favorite quote here of the show. Are you unpopular? Do you pop out at parties? Yeah, the line's supposed to be, are you unpopular? Do you poop out at parties? And she mixes it up, and I don't know why, just the, do you pop out at parties? I'm picturing something bad.
Yeah.
I remember laughing at that so hard when I was a child. That line that's the best line in the whole show, I think.
Yeah, I agree. She does drunk really, really well. And actually, she was really nervous about doing that commercial scene, which I completely get. I mean, I'm just doing a podcast. It's not on national television or anything. And I was like,
right.
Damn it, I'm gonna screw up Vita Meta Vegemin. Like, I'm having to slow down and spell it out. She just spat it out like it was nothing over and over and over again. Until she's not supposed to because she's drunk, but...
Right.
It was impressive. She did good. She didn't have anything to be nervous about.
Yeah, she did a great job at the commercial with, like, no experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also liked... So, to prove to Ricky that she does well with commercials, which she has no experience, so he has nothing to go on, she decides to climb into a television set and do a fake cigarette commercial for him. And obviously, the reason that they chose cigarettes for this episode is because when they started the show out, CBS couldn't find sponsors for the show. The only sponsor they could find was Philip Morris, who, they're a tobacco company, if you don't know, and their only stipulation was that someone had to be seen holding a cigarette or smoking in every episode, which I never noticed that.
I didn't know that either. I just assumed everybody smoked back then, and I mean, most people did, but
right.
I didn't know that fact. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I noticed it, but I didn't really, like, I guess I was kind of like you. Yeah, it's that time period, whatever.
Yeah,
everybody smoked back then.
But then, as she's I know that I talked to you guys about this before we even started recording, but before she even gets done with the commercial, Ricky decides it's a good idea to plug the television set in while she's in it. I mean, he just, for sport, electrocuted his wife.
But if you think about it, she had taken everything out of that TV, so there would have been no way that he could have actually electrocuted her.
Well, yeah, that's true. And by the way, that's a dick move too. I know that, like, right. I kind of scoffed at his comment in the last episode about his hard-earned money, but seriously, I mean, it's a television set. She took every piece out of it.
I liked when he was like, all right, where'd you put the piece? And she said, just one piece? And he goes, yeah, it comes out in one big piece. And she goes, oh no. And she pulls a cart and it has like every piece possible all strewn about.
Yeah. I might have killed her.
Yes.
I loved her reaction. She just said, are you trying to barbecue me?
Yeah. I mean, I understand it was for a good reason. It was comedic. I did laugh, but if you're looking at it from a realistic perspective, it's like, my God, I hope someone wouldn't do that to me.
Well, don't go climbing in any televisions.
Well, I wouldn't fit in one nowadays.
I know.
Right.
You can't even do that now.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the show, of this episode, was by the end of when she was doing the Vitamin Vegemin commercial, and she got so drunk that she had to pour the medicine into the spoon, but she kept missing the spoon. So she put the spoon on the table and then held the bottle in both hands and dumped it in there. And she just looked so proud of herself that she figured it out.
Yeah, well, and at the beginning of the commercial, when she's shooting it, every time she takes a bite of that, she makes the worst face, which, again, laughed every single time. Yeah, every single time she did it, I laughed. Then, by the end of it, she's like, this stuff doesn't taste half bad. And I thought, man, I can relate. Like, any liquor that I've ever had, I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. But after, like, I don't know, the fourth shot, you're like, yeah, this is good.
Pour me another.
Right. And Kelly, I like your quote here when Ricky asked Lucy, "Do you want me to starve?"
Oh my gosh. That's so something I would say to Chad. Would you please?
Would you please?
This is the way she says it. Like, she so means it. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
I know. Their relationship is very realistic. I mean, even set in the 50s, I mean, you watch it and sometimes you're like, oh, this is a little misogynist or whatever, but really, if you think about it, Lucy always holds her own. Always.
Yeah,
she does. And that's the best part about her, I think.
Right, yeah, I agree. And you can tell that they genuinely love each other.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, you can kind of look past all of the other stuff. So, the next episode that was requested was Season 5, Episode 23, which was titled Lucy's Italian Movie. And this is where the whole gang goes to Italy, and Lucy is asked by a big film producer to be in a movie called Bitter Grapes. She decides to go to a local vineyard, even though Ricky tells her not to, and stomps grapes with a local employee. She ends up getting into a grape fight with the woman, and her skin and hair are all stained blue. This leaves the filmmaker no choice but to kick her out of the film, which has nothing to do with grapes, by the way, and hire Ethel instead. Kelly, you want to start the discussion on this next episode?
So, my favorite scene was when she told Ethel that she was going to go to this vineyard where they still stomped grapes, and Ethel asked her, well, what should I tell Ricky? And Lucy says, I don't care, you can tell him the truth because I don't have anything to hide. And Ethel says, okay, well then I'll tell him the truth. And Lucy almost cuts her off and says, don't you dare.
Yeah. Yeah, that was very realistic, too.
I liked in the very opening scene when they're all cramped in the train car, and Ethel goes, "I can't believe we have 13 more hours in this sardine can." And Lucy goes, "Well, sardines are better off. They have all that oil to move around in."
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was a good line. I know my favorite lines or scene in this episode is when Lucy's looking at the magazine with all of the, I don't know if they're models or actresses or what, but she makes the comment about all of these earthy women over in Italy, and she asks Ricky, "Do you like earthy women?" And he says, "What's earthy?" So she opens the magazine and she says, "That." And he says, "Well, honey, we don't call that earthy in Cuba." She says, "What do you call it?" He says, "We have 5 words for it. Ay, 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 ay." And I thought he was so adorable in that part. I don't know. I think that Desi Arnaz is an adorable guy, but he was beyond adorable in that part.
I like then right after that when the bellboy comes in and they're showing him the magazine, and the bellboy says the same thing when he comes to that picture, and Ricky goes, "How about that? It's the same thing in Italy."
Yeah. Like, there's no language barrier there. Which I guess kind of makes sense, because isn't Italian kind of close to Spanish in some aspects?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that there's some
Could be.
over... Maybe it's because, I don't know, every language, I guess, is
Everything
based
comes
in
from
Latin,
Latin.
so that makes sense. Yeah. So, one of my notes that I have here, when she's talking to the bellhop, she asks him if there's any vineyards around where they still stomp grapes to make the wine. And he says to her that it's an outdated method, but there is one vineyard that still does it. And this seems like a complete throwaway comment. I never noticed really that it was even in there, other than, oh, well, there's still one that they could go do it. But actually, it's important because the vineyard that donated the grapes for that scene, which, I mean, it was a lot, they would only do it if they stated in the show that that method was no longer used. I'm assuming so that people would still buy wine, because I would not buy wine that has been on someone's dirty ass feet. But I mean, I'm not 100% on that. Don't quote me.
They washed them in that tub.
Yeah, that's true.
And the
Yep.
alcohol kills the germs.
Well, yeah. Of course.
I don't know. I like wine.
That was a funny.
So.
See, I don't like wine because I think it tastes like dirty feet. Give me beer or liquor any day. Maybe
depending on
it's just
the wine.
Right, maybe it's just a mental thing because I saw this episode growing up and I'm like, wine tastes like feet.
I did like when she was at the vineyard too, and she walks in with her shoes on, and then she notices everybody else doesn't have any shoes, so she hides them real quick in the corner, and then she goes to walk out on the concrete, and you can see by her facial expressions that the concrete is so hot, and then she finally steps into that water tub to wash her feet, and her face just lights up, and it was so funny to me.
Well, and you can relate to that if you've ever been to the beach.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it reminds me of Myrtle
right?
Beach.
Yes.
That is exactly how you feel.
With this episode, I just thought it was so neat how, I mean, the majority of the episode was in a different language, and you could still see everything that was going on, and you knew exactly what the feeling was just by her facial expressions and the body language that she had. And I just think that it's so crazy that you laugh and you can feel every emotion, her anger towards the other grape stomper and everything, just with her facial expressions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. She was the queen of physical comedy, for sure.
Yes.
The other thing that I found really interesting, and by interesting, maybe I just mean shocking, I don't know, was that the employee that they hired from to play the the woman stomping the grapes with Lucy, she didn't speak any English. So she had to have somebody explain the scene to her, and I guess somewhere in translation, something was lost, and she didn't realize that the entire scene was shot from the knee up. So when they were wrestling in the grapes, I mean, she was going all out. And she held Lucille Ball's head under those grapes until she nearly drowned.
Oh, it's so good, though. It looked so real.
Oh yeah, because it was.
Yeah.
She almost died for the sake of comedy, and you know what? I salute you, Lucille Ball, that you
Give her
cared
props.
enough about
Absolutely.
my laughter that you almost died for it. Yeah, and also, Desi Arnaz was a stickler for accuracy, which we kind of talk about with the next episode too. But the reason I bring it up is because at the end of this episode, when she shows up and the filmmaker's there and she's covered in the blue stains, those are actual blue stains, even though the entire show is shot in black and white because they wanted it to be authentic. I mean, her skin and hair was actually dyed with a dye that wouldn't irritate anything, but still, I mean, I think that speaks volumes to just what professionals they are.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. It does seem kind of silly that they... I mean, like, not silly, but nobody's gonna know that.
Right, I mean,
Well, it was shot in
wouldn't
front
have
of a
known.
live audience.
Oh, that's true, that's true.
Yeah, that's true. Every episode had like 300 people actually sitting there and watching.
Yeah, they had a live audience. So,
Right.
I guess they kind of had to do it for the actual people sitting in front of them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I forget that because sitcoms today just use the laugh track from I Love Lucy.
Right. Right, exactly.
I mean, you don't think about it anymore. So, alright, if you guys are ready, we can move on to the last episode, which
Yay.
is Abby's favorite. So, this episode is from Season 1, Episode 25. It's titled Pioneer Woman. And again, the show starts with a bet made because the men think that the women complain too much for, like, because they have modern day appliances. Apparently they're not allowed to be upset about housework. The women want to be part of this high society club, and I can't remember what the name of the club is. I have it somewhere in my
The
notes.
Matron Society or something like that.
Yes,
Society
it's-
Matrons League.
Yep,
Yes,
that's it.
thank you.
So, Ethel is so concerned that these highfalutin men are going to go and kiss her hand, and they're going to be disgusted by her dry, wrinkly hands from doing dishes. Which I want to make fun of, but I absolutely get it, because before I had a dishwasher, I was like, oh my god, like, my hands are 10 years older than me, so I'm not actually going to make fun of her for that. Moving along, everyone decides to go back to the pioneer days. So the women basically say, well, if you think that we have issues, we're going to show you that you have issues too. So they end up going through these pioneer days where they can't, like, Lucy can't use the stove, and the men can't use razors, and so on and so forth. And while all this is happening, the women from this high society club, they show up, and everyone's like, oh, what are we gonna do to convince these women that we actually are high society, because we have a fucking bathtub sitting in the middle of our kitchen. So how are we supposed to explain that? So Ricky bites the bullet, and he says, I'm gonna tell everybody that this is just a skit for a show that I'm doing. This is a dress rehearsal. It'll be fine. So that's what he does, and apparently the women have more of an issue with him being in show business than they do with the bathtub being in the kitchen, which kind of confuses me a little bit. But Lucy is pissed off that they insulted her husband, and she tells them, step off, bitch, get out of my house. But she doesn't actually say that because it's the 50s, and like you're not even allowed to say you're not even allowed to use the term pregnant on TV because it's vulgar. But that's another story.
Right.
And Ricky is so proud of Lucy for taking up for him that he calls the bet off and gives her the $50, which I don't know how inflation works, but I'm assuming at that point it was probably more than $50 today.
Oh yeah,
Right.
I'm sure that was a lot.
Right. So Abby, this is your favorite episode. Why is this your favorite?
Okay, so as a child, I watched I Love Lucy all the time, every night. I had memorabilia all throughout my room. It's a little ridiculous, actually, but this episode, I just remember it being so funny, the interaction between Lucy and Ethel in the kitchen when Lucy's making the bread and the dough, and they just had like such a close bond in that moment, I think, when they were trying to figure it out, and Lucy keeps kneading the dough, and it's so big that she can't hold it anymore, and then when they go to throw it on the counter, Ethel's head gets stuck in it. That whole just scene right there made it so funny to me. And then when the bread just keeps coming out of the oven, it's just so unrealistic, but so funny.
Yeah, I mean, and they knew that it was unrealistic because, again, Desi was such a stickler for things feeling authentic. He knew that the studio audience was going to be there and see this ridiculous 8-foot-long loaf of bread come out of the oven, that he actually contacted a local bakery and made them bake an 8-foot-long loaf of bread, which was
That's crazy.
rye,
I didn't even
if
realize that.
How do you
if
transport
anybody
that?
cares, it's rye.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kelly. How did they transport that?
I don't know. I guess they just walked it down the street. I don't know.
Maybe Google it. Google knows everything.
Yeah.
They could sponsor us if they wanted.
I also liked in that episode when Ethel was turning the butter and her hands cramped up so much that she couldn't get it out of the handle. And it's because she was trying to make butter out of milk instead of cream.
Right,
Oh,
which is
man.
something I absolutely would do. I mean, I'll just admit it. I don't know anything. Just like when they're baking the bread, Lucy makes some kind of comment that she's using 13 cakes of yeast. Is that a thing, or did I mishear
No, that's
that?
a thing.
mean,
I actually looked it up.
Did you?
Yeah, because I had only ever heard of the packets, and I looked it
Me
up,
too.
and I guess
The
one
instant
cake,
yeast.
yeah, one cake is equivalent to like one of those packets. It looks like one of those little butters that you get at a restaurant.
That
Oh,
is
okay.
a lot of yeast.
Yeah, that'll make about an 8-foot-pound of bread there.
Yeah. I also loved when Ethel actually finished churning the butter, and she was so proud, but she makes this statement that is also true for anybody who does, like, at-home projects. She says, imagine all that butter, and it only cost me $23.79.
That was the best. Oh.
Yeah, that's something I don't understand, because they had this bet because their husbands didn't want to buy them the dishwashers, but they could spend all this money to make it from scratch and to get a freaking bathtub.
Right, I was wondering
yeah.
how much that bathtub cost.
I thought the same thing, and also there's a part where Lucy is sure she's going to catch Ricky and get this bet called off before these women even show up to her house, because she's watching for him to show up, like in a cab or something, I suppose, and he rides up on a horse.
Yeah, where did he
Like,
get the horse?
But not only that, I
In New
own
York City.
horses. Yeah. I own horses. Now, I don't know how much it is to rent a horse, because that seems absurd, but horses are not inexpensive. So, like, I feel like at this point they're just trying to prove who can do it.
Yeah, they could have bought the dishwasher.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Well, the whole thing that started this was Lucy wanted an electric dishwasher because, you know, her hands are wrinkly for the high society men. And yeah, Ricky basically says, I can't afford that, but I'll get you a pair of rubber gloves. And Fred says, I can't even afford the rubber gloves.
I think just the over-exaggeration of this episode is what I really loved about it. You know, him riding up on a horse and them taking a bath in the middle of their kitchen, and the men just seemed so okay with the whole situation too, which was really funny to me.
I loved Fred's little
like
outfit.
Yeah, when he puts his outfit on, he's like stomping through the room. It's so funny.
Yeah. Well, and my thing is, of course the men are okay with it. Like, the women are having to churn butter and need 500 pounds of dough, and the men have to do away with their electric razors and wear fancy clothes.
Right.
I mean, I know that probably is accurate for pioneer days. It probably sucked a lot more for women than for men. But it's like, are you kidding me? This bet shouldn't even be happening. This is unfair.
But at least she ends up winning it in the end.
Well, that's true. That's true, because she took up for him. That's love.
Yes.
I appreciate that. But also, we had this conversation at work the other day because as I was watching this, I remembered when Lucy was like, I need one of those electric dishwashers that everyone's talking about. And I was like, this is 1951, 52. I don't know why in my brain I didn't even think that dishwashers were invented until the 70s.
Well, you were kind of right because they weren't commonplace until then.
Well, that's true, but I guess that's kind of... I guess that they don't really pretend that they're a poor couple or anything, but you don't watch it and get the impression that they're super rich, at least not in season 1, because he's attempting to further his career. So, why she thinks they can afford a dishwasher? I don't know. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm giving Ricky too hard of a time. Maybe if I was in his position, I would be like, listen, woman, you need to appreciate the rubber gloves that I bought you last week and just do the dishes.
Right. No, and I think that in the entire series itself, the Fred's comments are actually, if you have to listen to him and really pay attention, but he has such great little one-liners throughout the entire series about money or his wife and all this stuff. It's just, I actually really enjoyed his character as well.
Oh, yeah. Me too. I would agree with that. I think that he's underappreciated.
I completely agree with that.
So, before we go, I want to talk about some just fun random facts that I found, because I'm one of those people that as I watch things, I like to research and I just learn more about the show. And I Love Lucy is one that, like I said, I watched with my grandma when it was on Nick at Night and all that, but I didn't actively watch it, Abby. I know that you're like a super fan. You have all the box sets, Barbie dolls, all of that.
I did. I don't know why, and I was like 8. Like, what 8-year-old watches I Love Lucy all the time? Like, I don't understand it, but it was just one of my favorite shows.
A super cool 8-year-old watches I Love Lucy.
Do you think it had anything to do with your hair color?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe. Maybe that's why I like my red hair this way. I always thought Lucille Ball in general was just such a classy lady, and she just had so much, I'm trying to think of the word. Like, she's just so poised and relatable at the same time. I don't know. I always really loved her.
Yeah, I can see that. I never even thought about that, but when I did the promo and I made the comment that she was everyone's favorite redhead, did that offend you?
Oh no. She is everybody's
Okay.
favorite redhead.
She's not my
Okay,
favorite
good.
redhead.
She's Kelly's gonna
Who's your
go
favorite
against
redhead?
the grain on this one.
My favorite redhead is Des. My baby
Oh,
Des.
your son, of course.
Who is not named after Ricky Ricardo.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure. He's named after a character on Lost.
Oh, that's right. I remember that now. I
That
wouldn't have
podcast
judged
will
you
come
because
at some point, I'm sure.
I'm sure it will. We kind of got off topic here, sorry. So, I do research, and I found some fun facts that you guys might want to know about. So, Lucille Ball got pregnant, and instead of them doing the typical, like, shooting from the waist up or whatever, they decided to put the pregnancy into the show, which was only the second of its kind. A lot of people think it was the first, but it's not. I can't remember the show, forgive me, but it was actually the second. But they could not use the term pregnant on television, as I said before, because CBS thought it was too vulgar, and so everyone had to use the term expecting, which I loved the little tidbit that it said. The word expecting was used, or when Ricky said it, spectin'.
Yeah, that's a little weird to me that pregnant was an offensive term. I don't get it.
Oh, yeah. I found it offensive that they thought that was offensive.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right.
Yeah. But, it was so bad that Desi hired a priest, a minister, and a rabbi to sit in on every episode to make sure that nothing offensive was said. That seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
But, yeah. The other thing I loved about the pregnancy was the episode where little Ricky is born. Little Ricky was played by twins, Joseph A. and Michael Mayer, and then later, when he grew up, by a kid named Keith Thibodeau. But when little Ricky was born, when that episode aired, that was the same day Lucille Ball gave birth. So technically, she gave birth to Desi Arnaz Jr. the same day that little Ricky was born.
That's crazy. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I thought that was so cool. And they didn't know the sex of Lucille Ball's baby. They knew that the character was going to be a boy, but they didn't know if she was pregnant with a boy or a girl. And when she had the baby, Desi actually called the head writer, and he said to him, "Lucy followed your script, ain't she something?" And I thought that was adorable. But, I didn't watch this show a ton, but it was requested for a reason. It says a record-breaking 71.7% of American televisions were tuned into the episode where little Ricky was born, which that means it had to have some amount of fan base. And it said it was the most watched show. Yeah, it was the most watched show for 4 of its 6 seasons, won 5 Emmy Awards, and was the first show to shoot using a 3-camera setup, which is used in, like, every sitcom now. So, it really was groundbreaking.
Well, and to think 71.7% of American televisions were turned into it, not a ton of people had television sets back in that time frame either. So that's pretty much everybody who had a television set was watching it.
Right. Which, I guess if you kind of think about it, when I was growing up, we had like 3 or 4 channels, so...
Right.
Maybe it's not that much. Watch, but... Yeah, maybe that's not that much to brag about. I don't know.
It's still pretty impressive.
Yeah. But we're going to end the episode by reading some of the comments that were posted on social media when we asked about, what your favorite episode was, when you started watching, that type of thing. we had a lot of response on Twitter. Some of them coming from other podcasts, which we really appreciate you guys, interacting and kind of getting us off on the right foot. We have comments from Never Ending Jewelry Party. She said, of these 4 episodes, I'd be stuck between picking the Vitamita Vegemin and the Job Switching as a favorite. The Italian movie was good, but not a favorite of mine. I never liked Pioneer as much because that bread scene, although funny, removes suspension of disbelief too much, which, I mean, that's fair enough.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I didn't like that either.
I was 8.
I know, that's fine. I can see why a lot of people would like it, but that's one of the things that I don't like is, even if it's like a cartoon or something, I'm like, that's unrealistic.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
It's a cartoon, so obviously.
Yeah. Anytown USA, or at Anytown Podcast on Twitter, said, I see that title card and the music immediately starts playing in my head. And I am the exact same way. I wish we could have used some of the theme music, but I'm a rule follower and I don't know copyright laws, and I am not breaking any rules. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, we're not trying to get in trouble.
Nope, this is just for fun. We're just 2 moms having a good time. Don't want to be hauled off in handcuffs. That's a little extreme.
I don't know, that might be a vacation.
Well, that's true.
Please don't.
Yeah. FBI, come get me. Alex on Twitter, at AlexPL20me, said that his favorite episodes was when Lucy has her baby, Vitamita Vegemin, when Lucy crushes grapes in Italy, the first time they go to Hollywood, and Lucy gets pie on Will Holden. I did not watch that episode. I apologize, but that was mentioned at least twice. And the episode,
that was a good one.
Yeah, the episode where Lucy gets Mr. Burroughs, the writer, into her son's pageant, the black eye, when she thinks Ricky is trying to murder her. I did watch when she thinks Ricky is trying to murder her.
Oh, I watched that too. It was really funny.
Yeah, we agree with you, Alex, that almost made the list. It just missed the cut.
Yes.
Yeah. Cheska Brown on Facebook said The Chocolate Factory. The cowboy episode, which there were 2 that could have been. I'm not sure which one she was referring to. They both looked extremely funny. And she said, I love Lucy and The Lucy Show. She watched with her grandma growing up. It was their Saturday night tradition, which I think is great. That's perfect.
Yes. The Lucy Show came out after they got divorced, I think.
I think
mistaken.
so. Yeah. Jared Gilbert on Facebook said that his favorite episode was the trip to California when they stop at the Randown Restaurant and Hotel.
Yes, I was thinking about that one the other day.
Yeah, that one's a pretty good one too. And Brittany DeSandra on Facebook said, I used to watch I Love Lucy with my grandma all the time when I was a kid. 3 moments stick out to me as my favorites. The time Lucy ends up stomping grapes and fighting that woman in the grape vat. The time Lucy and Ethel get jobs at the candy factory and end up stuffing their faces and shirts with chocolates because they're coming down the line too fast for them. And, of course, the vitamin V. See, there you go. That is a testament to how good. Yeah, Abby, there you go. That episode is an absolute classic. So, thank you guys so much for responding to us. We're going to try to include comments from listeners every episode. So, we're trying to keep up with all of the comments that we're getting on social media, and we really appreciate your input. It's really helpful when it comes to picking out episodes, so please keep that up. So I think that's it for this episode. Abby, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we needed an I Love Lucy fan because neither Kelly or I really knew too much about it. Kelly, did you even watch the show at all before?
No, I only watched it for this podcast. But I was really glad that I did because it was hilarious.
You should watch more episodes.
I should.
Yeah. So, thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully you stick around.
Thank you.
After all of the kind of, this is kind of trial and error for us. This is our first episode. We are all coming to you remotely, which is why there's some interruptions. We're kind of trying to figure out who's talking when. We'll sort through that.
I think we did pretty good, actually.
Yeah, I don't think it was too bad. Yeah, but just bear with us. Episode 2 will be coming shortly. We will be talking about one of my favorites. I'm so excited. The Golden Girls. Another classic. So excited. You guys did great picking out these shows. I cannot even put into words how excited I am about this podcast. I appreciate every single one of you. So just stay tuned for the next episode to drop. This one will drop as soon as I get it edited. I promise I will try to keep up. We are hoping that this podcast will be bi-weekly, so watch for new episodes. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.
Bye.
If you would like to talk more about this episode and discuss upcoming episodes with us, follow us on Twitter and Facebook, both at the Faves of Our L1. That's at the Faves of Our L and the number 1. Thanks for listening.